The big question that everybody wants an answer to is, when are we going to start making some more significant moves in terms of ADA price? When are we going to see this mega rally, the one that blows us past $2, sends us to new all-time highs, and starts targeting some of those prices like we talked about earlier on in this market cycle? And I do like to listen to opposing views. I like taking in opposing data. And I was actually watching this Ben Cowen video this morning. Don't really watch a ton of his content, but I thought there were some very interesting things that we need to reference back to. And in fact, I think that these next 2 months are going to be pretty eye-opening, maybe even 2.5 months for altcoins. So we're going to talk about that and more in this video. So if you guys are new or haven't already, show your support for the channel down below. Hit that subscribe button, that bell. They'll keep you updated anytime there's new content live here on the channel. So I have to say that this has definitely been a long-term game, and this market cycle has been longer in terms of waiting for this significant altcoin performance. At this point in the market cycle, we'd be very much into an alt season. Alts will have had significantly run so far, and that just simply has not been the case. And there could be one of many reasons why. I would say the biggest reason why, at least that we can see publicly, is all this negative news, all the negative sentiment that has been injected into the market that a lot of people are feeling, right? The war news, the macro data, the tariff news, right? There's been a lot of stuff that has just beat us up time and time and time again, while BTC has just continued to gain dominance in the crypto market. That is where this market cycle, I would say, has been harder than other market cycles, but at the same time, we've been able to buy at such cheap prices for such a long period of time. I believe there's a big supply shock coming, and we'll maybe mention that more later on. But what I will say here is, unfortunately, Michael Saylor hinted at buying more BTC on Monday, so maybe we have a little bit of drop in the early part of the week. And I'm only joking on that because a lot of times we see some dropping when he buys. But what I want to actually reference is what Ben Cowen was discussing in this video. Now, he actually talked about quite a few different things. He talked about quantitative easing. He talked about interest rate decreases. And one of the things that we've actually referenced before here on the channel is this total 3 minus USDT versus BTC. Now, this is a chart that we've actually tracked for quite some time. And one thing that he was actually referencing was the fact that we have not come down to the range lows in terms of this chart. In fact, when we look back at 2017, we look back at 2020, we actually did come down and basically touch these range lows before altcoins saw some significant performance. We did actually, like he mentioned, swing down below that on the early part of 2021, but this is what led us on, some of those exciting altcoin rallies that we remember throughout history. Now, this market cycle has been a little different. We have not gotten down to this range low yet. And he references some things. Maybe it was the pause of quantitative, or not pause, the slowdown in terms of quantitative tightening that has kind of made us, instead of accelerating straight down to this line, it's caused us to just take a slower road here. And he's referenced the fact that, we haven't had QE, the fact that we haven't had rate cuts yet, maybe in fact the reason why we haven't seen a pivot on this chart quite yet. And that could be 100% true. We might be waiting for those things for the market to open up a little bit, for people to start again having enough confidence to see capital start flowing back into the crypto market. Right now, guys, like we've referenced many times before, there is still so much capital sidelined, and it's waiting and waiting and waiting. And it's a moment of, what are they waiting for? And maybe it's just, again, kicking the PTSD in the market. Maybe it's actually waiting for rate decreases or quantitative easing or whatever it might be. But what I thought was really interesting here in terms of this chart is, we might be accelerating towards this trend line over this next month or two here. And that would actually coincide with an ADA breakout. And I'll want to get into this a little more. Now, understand that because we're 21% away from this doesn't mean that alts need to drop 21%. You could, in fact, see BTC run 10%. You could see alts drop 10%. And this could be, after we get a Bitcoin rally. Maybe everything runs together and BTC holds its ranges and alts get a little bit of a sell-off, right? And we kind of do this crap that we've been doing where BTC dominance is on the rise and alts just still feel that PTSD. That could be the way that we do get here over time. And what I found very interesting about this is, again, this timeline for this taking place very much coincides with this ADA BTC chart like we've been talking about. We are building, again, that descending wedge. And I do want to reference the fact that, again, we had this descending wedge building here in 2024 before we had that early breakout of it. Now, this does, in fact, target the early part of August. It would be the very tip of this. This would almost be a double bottom versus the ADA BTC chart from back in October of 2024. And that could, in fact, be the moment where we break out here. Could be end of July, start of August. Now, what is taking place right at the end of July? The next FOMC meeting. And right now, we are currently sitting at a point where there is only an 18.6% likelihood of an interest rate decrease taking place at the July meeting. I'm starting to get more and more convinced that we will see a very small interest rate decrease, especially with the gap between the meetings. You have to remember, from the July 30th, it's going to be all the way until September 17th. That is a long period of time to let what we have going on right now stew. You could be talking about unemployment rising. You could be talking about a much more significant economic slowdown. And I don't know if the Fed necessarily wants that to take place. So they might just basically throw us a little bit of a bone before reassessing things in September. I think as long as the data looks good this month, we might be seeing that interest rate decrease take place, even if it's just a quarter point at the end of July. And that could be, again, where you see altcoins get their breakout and we get a little bit of a rally. And maybe at that point, we see that happen once again, where we get a little bit of a slowdown. BTC holds its strength. Alts kind of bleed out a little bit. But things are, in fact, from a timing standpoint, kind of aligning perfectly. So maybe we do have some altcoin bleeding ahead, not in a significant way. And maybe we're talking about it at higher prices, right? Could see a little bit of a breakout here, kind of come back down, bleed into the late part of July, a little bit of a run here, come back down, something like that. All right. Not saying that has to happen for sure, right? This isn't the guarantee or financial advice, but I do want to look at both sides of this. What he was also talking about is typically in June, we get a little bit of a BTC dominance cool down. So guess what? We're just getting through June now. That could be, again, where you see altcoins make up just a little bit of ground versus BTC, like we were talking about. So the thing that I have to say is that we're eventually going to get to quantitative easing. We're eventually going to get to interest rate decreases. We're eventually going to get into liquidity injections into the economy here in the US in a bigger way. And we're eventually going to see big injections of liquidity into the crypto market and specifically flowing to altcoins. But the biggest thing we need to get through is, again, a lot of this noise, a lot of this negativity that we've dealt with in the market. And we are slowly but surely making our way there. The negative events, they're quieting down per se. And I will say that the reactions from retail are lessening slightly. All right. Not there yet, but we are making progress. And what I think that means for us is that at some point this year, we are going to see a significant rally for altcoins. And this is where, again, we may be looking at a more extended cycle. I think we're about at the point where we can call the 4-year cycle broken. We're almost there, guys. And what that might mean is that we may have more extended rallies. They may not be as significant or as aggressive as people want, but we could be talking about a more steady churn up and to the right as we are getting into bigger times of adoption. You have to remember, we still need to get past this, 5 to 6% of the world in crypto. It's supposed to be over 10% by the end of this market cycle. Well, I doubt it's going to be in a very compressed window. It might be more elongated, which is good because then we can assess other opportunities in the market. And for an ecosystem that has gone through some significant developments, for a lot of new coins coming online, for a lot of untapped potential, that's where really Cardano has a big chance to thrive. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. I appreciate it as always. Let me know your thoughts below, but have a great day. Catch you guys in the next one. Take care.